Imaginary novelty of the idea of Superman. Nature has in no way guaranteed a Superman. She holds within herself all possibilities, including the most sinister. Man cannot be promoted to Superman as a reward either for a long term of service, or for irreproachable conduct. For his sufferings, whether accidental or created by himself unintentionally through his own stupidity or unadaptability to life, or even intentionally for the sake of the reward which he hopes to obtain. This too is where karma and the understanding of karma becomes a schism, confused often with the law of outcomes, which is entirely different. Nothing leads to Superman except the understanding of the idea of Superman, and it is precisely this understanding that is becoming more and more rare. For all its inevitability, the idea of Superman is not clear. The psychological outlines of Superman elude modern man like a shadow. Men create Superman according to their own likeness and image, endowing him with their qualities, tastes, and defects in exaggerated form. To Superman are ascribed features and qualities that can never belong to him, features that are entirely contradictory and incompatible, which deprive one another of any value and instead assure mutual destruction. The idea of Superman is generally approached from the wrong angle. It is taken either too simply, merely on one plane, or too fantastically, without any connection with reality. The result is that the idea is distorted and man's treatment of it becomes more and more erroneous. In order to find the right approach to this idea, we must first of all create for ourselves a harmonious picture of Superman. Vagueness, indefiniteness, and diffuseness are in no way necessary attributes of the avatar of Superman. We can know more about him than we think, if only we want to and know how to go about it. We have clear and definite lines of thought for reasoning about Superman and definite notions, some connected with the idea of Superman and others opposed to it. All that is required is to avoid confusing them. Then the understanding of Superman, the creation of a harmonious picture of Superman, will cease to be such an unattainable dream as it sometimes appears. The inner growth of man follows quite definite paths. It is necessary to determine and to understand these paths, otherwise when the idea of Superman is accepted in one form or another, but not connected vitally with the life of man, it takes strange, sometimes grotesque or even monstrous forms. People who think naively picture Superman to themselves as a kind of exaggerated man, in whom both the positive and the negative sides of human nature have developed with equal freedom, and reached the utmost limits of their possible development. But this is exactly what is impossible. The most elementary acquaintance with psychology, certainly if we take psychology as real understanding of the laws of the inner being of man, shows that the development of features of one kind can only proceed at the expense of features of another kind. There are many contradictory qualities in man that can in no way develop on parallel lines. The imagination of primitive peoples pictured Superman as a giant, a man of Herculean strength, extremely long-lived. We must revise the qualities of Superman, that is the qualities ascribed to Superman, and determine whether these qualities can be developed only in man. If qualities which can exist apart from him are attributed to Superman, it becomes evident that these qualities are wrongly connected with him. Only those qualities must develop in Superman that can develop in him alone. For instance, gigantic size cannot by any means be a quality of absolute value for Superman. Trees can be still taller. Houses, towers, mountains may be higher than the tallest giant that Earth can bear. Thus height and size cannot serve as the aim of the evolution of Superman. Besides, modern biology knows that man cannot be taller than a certain height, that his skeleton would not stand a weight greatly surpassing the weight of a man's body. Nor does enormous physical strength present an absolute value. Man with his own weak hands is able to construct machines more powerful than any giant. For nature, for the earth, the strongest man, even a giant, is just a pygmy, imperceptible on its surface. Neither is longevity, however great it may be, a sign of inner growth. Trees can exist for thousands of years. A stone can exist for tens or hundreds of thousands of years and still remain on the same level of being. All these qualities are of no value in Superman, because they can be manifested apart from him. In Superman, qualities must develop that cannot exist in a tree or in a stone, qualities with which neither high mountains nor earthquakes can compete. The development of inner world, of mind space, the evolution of consciousness, the expansion of conscious awareness. This is an absolute value which in the world known to us can develop only in man, and cannot develop apart from him. The evolution of consciousness, the inner growth of man is the ascent towards Superman. However, inner growth proceeds not along one line, but along several lines simultaneously. These lines must be established and determined through plenary consciousness, because intermingled with them are many deceptive false ways that lead man aside, turn him backward, or draw him down blind alleys. It is of course impossible to dogmatize a form of the intellectual and emotional development of Superman. However, several sides of it can be shown with perfect exactitude. The first thing that can be said is that Superman cannot be thought about on an ordinary materialistic plane. Superman must necessarily be connected with something mysterious, something of magic and of sorcery or occultism. Consequently, an interest directed towards the mysterious and inexplicable, a gravitation towards the occult or shamanism are inevitably connected with evolution in the direction of Superman. Man suddenly feels that he cannot continue to ignore much that has seemed to him till now unworthy of attention. Suddenly he begins to see everything as it were with new eyes, and all the fair alike, the mystical and spiritual that only yesterday he smilingly rejected as superstition, acquires unexpectedly for him some new deep meaning, either symbolical or real. He finds new understanding in things, unexpected and strange analogies. An interest in the study of religions old and new appears in him. His thoughts penetrate the inward meaning of allegories and myths. He finds a deep and strange significance in things that formerly looked self-evident and uninteresting. It may be that interest in the mysterious and the miraculous creates the chief watchword serving to unite men who begin to discover the hidden meaning of life. But the same interest in the mysterious and miraculous also serves to test people. A man who has retained the possibilities of credulity or superstition will infallibly run to one of the submerged rocks of which the sea of occultism is full. He will succumb to the seduction of some mirage, will in one way or another lose his aim. At the same time, Superman cannot be simply a great businessman or a great conqueror, a great statesman or a great scientist. He must inevitably be either a magician or a saint. Russian heroic legends always ascribe to their heroes traits of magical wisdom, that is, of secret knowledge. The idea of Superman is directly connected with the idea of hidden knowledge. The expectation of Superman is the expectation of some new revelation, of new wisdom. But, as has been previously stated, the expectation of Superman is sometimes connected with the usual theories of evolution, that is, with the idea of general evolution, and Superman is regarded in this case as a possible product of the evolution of man. It is curious that this seemingly most logical theory completely destroys the idea of Superman. The cause of this lies of course in the wrong view of evolution in general, that we have already examined. Furthermore, for some reason Superman cannot be regarded as a higher zoological type in comparison with man, as a product of the general law of evolution. There is in this view some radical mistake which is clearly felt in all attempts to form an image of the Superman of the distant and unknown future. The picture appears too nebulous and diffuse. The image of Superman in this case loses all color and grows almost repulsive, as though from the very fact of becoming lawful and inevitable. Superman must have something unlawful in him, something which violates the general course of things, something unexpected, unsubjected to any general laws. This idea is expressed by Nietzsche. Quote, "I want to teach men the sense of their existence, which is the Superman, the lightning out of the dark cloud, man. Thus spake Zarathustra." End quote. Nietzsche understood that Superman cannot be regarded as the product of a historical development that can be realized in the distant future, that he cannot be regarded as a zoological species. Lightning cannot be regarded as the result of the evolution of the cloud. But the feeling of the unlawfulness of Superman, his impossibility from the ordinary point of view, causes people to attribute to him features that are really impossible, and so Superman is often pictured as a kind of juggernaut truck, crushing people in its progress. Malice, hatred, pride, conceit, selfishness, cruelty are all considered superhuman, on the sole condition that they reach the furthest possible limits and do not stop at any obstacle. Complete liberation from all moral restraint is considered superhuman or approaching the Superman. Superman in the vulgar and falsified sense of the word means that all is permitted. The supposed amorality of Superman is associated with the name of Nietzsche, however Nietzsche is not guilty of this idea. On the contrary, perhaps no one has ever put into the philosophy of Superman so much longing for true morality and for true love as Nietzsche. He was only destroying the old petrified morality which had long since become antimoral. He rebelled against ready-made morality, against the invariable forms that in theory are obligatory always and for everyone and in practice are violated always and by everyone. Quote, "Verily I have taken from you perhaps 100 formulae and your virtue's favourite playthings, and now you upbraid me as children upbraid. They played by the sea, then came there a wave and swept their playthings into the deep, and now they cry." And further, "When I came unto men, then found I them resting on an old infatuation. All of them thought they had long known what was good or bad for men. This somnolence did I disturb when I taught that no one yet knows what is good and bad, unless it be the creating one. Thus spake Zarathustra." End quote. In Nietzsche the moral feeling is the feeling of artistic creation, the feeling of service. Often it is a very stern and merciless feeling. Zarathustra says, quote, "Oh, my brethren, am I then cruel? But I say what falls, that shall one also push." Thus spake Zarathustra. End quote. Obviously these words are doomed to misunderstanding and misinterpretation. The cruelty of Nietzsche's Superman is regarded as his chief feature, as the principle underlying his treatment of men. The great majority of Nietzsche's critics do not wish to see that this cruelty in Superman is turned against something inner, something in himself, against everything that is human, all too human, small, vulgar, literal and inert that makes man the corpse which Zarathustra carried on his back. The non-understanding of Nietzsche is one of the curious examples of a non-understanding which is almost intentional. Nietzsche's idea of Superman is clear and simple. It is sufficient to take the beginning of Zarathustra. Quote, "Thou great star! What would be thy happiness if thou hadst not those for whom thou shinest? For 10 years hast thou come up hither to my cave. Thou wouldst have satiated of thy light and of thy journey, had it not been for me, my eagle and my serpent. But we awaited thee every morning, took thy superfluity from thee and blessed thee for it. Lo! I am satiated with my wisdom, like the bee that has gathered too much honey. I need hands held out for it. I would fain bestow and distribute. Therefore I must descend into the deep, as thou dost in the evening. Bless the cup then that is about to overflow, that the water may flow golden out of it and carry everywhere the reflection of thy bliss." And further, Zarathustra went alone down the mountain and no one met with him. When however he entered the forest, there suddenly stood before him an old man, and thus spake the old man to Zarathustra. "No stranger to me is this wanderer. Many years ago passed he by. Zarathustra was he called, but he hath altered. Then thou carriedst thine ashes into the mountains. Wilt thou now carry thy fire into the valleys? Fearest thou not the incendiary's doom?" Yea, I recognized Zarathustra. Pure is his eye and no loathing looketh about his mouth. Zarathustra answered, "I love men." Yet after this, Nietzsche's ideas were regarded as one of the causes of German militarism and chauvinism. All this lack of understanding of Nietzsche is curious and characteristic because it can only be compared with the lack of understanding on the part of Nietzsche himself of the idea of Christianity, and of the Gospels. Nietzsche understood Christ according to Renan. Christianity was for him the religion of the weak and the miserable. He rebelled against Christianity, opposed Superman to Christ and did not wish to see that he was fighting the very thing that had created him and his ideas. Nietzsche did not or would not understand that his Superman was to a considerable event the product of Christian thought. Moreover, Nietzsche was not generally particularly frank, even with himself regarding the sources of his inspirations. I have never found, either in his biographies or in his letters, any indication of his acquaintance with contemporary occult literature. At the same time he obviously knew it well and made use of it. It is interesting to draw a parallel between some passages in the chapter on the bestowing of virtue in Nietzsche's Zarathustra and chapter 9, volume 1, in the Dogma et Ritual de la Haute Magie of Eliphas Levi.